Hey, welcome to lecture number 2, Future Logicians. This is how to spot an argument. Or how to recognize arguments. Before we do that, I want to just give a real quick explanation of the history of logic via a timeline, okay? So Aristotle invents logic that we know of. That's our first, it's recorded luckily by his students, many of whom we call the peripatetics, meaning that they walk and think. That is how Aristotle liked to do logic and other forms of reasoning that he did. He was a polymath, meaning that he knew a lot about a lot. He was an expert in many different subjects and was interested in almost everything under the sun and below the sea. So he operated in the 4th to 3rd century BCE. Then we have, in ancient Greece, we have Chrysippus and the Stoics, and then Epicurus and the Epicureans. They're all working on different parts of logic. A little bit later, we have Boethius. So this is now CE, okay. Avicenna and Averroes, Abelard and Duns Scotus in the Middle Ages. And then from the 14th century, where we've got Leibniz, to the 20th century, where we have Hilpinen and Whitehead and Barkhan, Marcuse, Wittgenstein. So I want you to enjoy the plethora of names if you don't know a whole bunch of logicians, but being a logician is a very specific role to play in philosophy and often also in mathematics, as well as computer science. So Aristotle was born 384, lived till 322 BCE. I'm going to explain the logicians. When I do explain them, I'm going to explain them as if they are non-player characters in a role-playing game. Okay, so first, his class would be sage or druid for Aristotle. He invented biology. Not exactly. His father was a famous and well-connected physician. Okay, and so he knew how to do things like dissect things, and he used this knowledge to invent what we think of as sort of zoology, or in particular, the difference between vertebrates and invertebrates, which he called bloodborne versus non-bloodborne. He also invented theories about theater or aesthetics, psychology, physics, so tons of different things that he inquired into, as well as his students in his school, which is called the Lyceum. So he invents logic and also metalogic, the foundations of logic, and for ethics, the virtue theory, in particular, the rule of golden mean. He wasn't always right about everything. He was often actually tremendously wrong when he was wrong, including many sexist thoughts, beliefs about hierarchies in human civilization, particularly slavery. And he was accused of impiety, and instead of being like Socrates and just going to his death proudly, Aristotle escaped Athens so that, as he put it, they did not sin against philosophy twice. One of his mottos is, "We become just by doing just acts." So here would be his scorecard if you want to develop a game for it. He taught Alexander the Great. He was his tutor for many years. He invented most disciplines of knowledge that we know today. And he himself is a peripatetic philosopher. We're not going to give him much credit for courage, but we're going to give him credit for ghosting, getting out of there on time. So, what is logic? Logic is an organized body of knowledge that evaluates arguments. It studies reasoning and develops methods for evaluating expressions of reasoning. An argument is a group of statements, one or more of which, the premises, are claimed to provide support for another statement, which is the conclusion. Here's an example. If the bridge is closed, no one can get to the island. The bridge is closed. Conclusion, no one can get to the island. So we use this form. This is if-then reasoning or hypothetical reasoning. We use this form of reasoning all the time. And logic just sort of uncovers the way it fits together. The way it fits together, what we call the inferential link, this is the connection between the premises and the conclusion. So here's another argument that is sort of a common style of argument. All horses are mammals. No mammals are reptiles. Thus, no horses are reptiles. So in this case, we're using what we call categorical reasoning, like all and no, and talking about different categories of existence, like horses and mammals. And the inferential link has to do with how these things work or don't work together. To talk about reasoning, we first may want to talk about thinking itself. If I'm thinking, which I am right now, this is not, my thoughts are not present to you unless I express them. Often I need to express them in language, and logic concentrates, and this introduction logic is going to concentrate mostly in expressing thoughts in language, but sometimes we'll use diagrammatic expressions. So if I have a concept like, or a thought like sheep jump over fences, okay, so that's my thought. Then I express it in language. In this case, I'm going to be presenting everything here in English first. Okay, so sheep jump over fences. The subject phrase, or what that sentence is making a claim about, is sheep. The predicate phrase, which is what asserts what's the case about the subject, or asserts the claim, is jumps over fences. Okay, so for English, this is normally pretty easy to figure out. Normally, the subject is what comes right before the verb. Okay, in active tense, the way we normally speak, we speak directly, and normally the subject comes first, and then the rest of it, starting with the verb, is the predicate phrase, is what is being claimed about the subject. So I'm claiming about the group sheep that they jump over fences, okay? I know this seems silly that it's, but we need to get at the very fundamental units of thought here. So I want you to do this yourself. Here's your active learning exercise. State the subject phrase of the sentence below. Female crabs that live in the James River are rare. So I'm going to give you a minute or a second to decide on this, and then I'm going to explain it, okay? So for this one, are rare is the predicate phrase. So everything that's before the verb are is in the subject phrase. And we can even check this by thinking about this, okay? If you thought the subject was crabs, then ask yourselves if crabs are rare, meaning if there aren't many crabs in the world. And you'll find that that's not true. If you break it into female crabs are rare, then that's also not true. But it is actually the case that female crabs that live in the James River are rare. Okay, so there are not that many of them. So I hope that makes sense for you on your active learning exercise, and the explanation was both coherent and that you wanted it. So here we go. Informal or natural language versus formal, or sometimes called artificial or constructed language. So I'm going to start with informal language. English is an informal language. It is a natural language. It arises over time, but within human society, naturally, it evolves, okay, given agreed upon convention. So other languages, natural languages, would be Japanese, Finnish, Swedish, I don't know what, Greek, okay, Russian. Yeah, So we got a lot of natural languages in the world. Often if we can conceptualize a nation, even within that nation, there are many other languages that have natural that are there that are just not as large as the major languages that are normally the ones that are named after that follow the convention of being named after the country now. Formal or artificial languages are different. So these are constructed languages. This means that somebody invents them and they invent them for a specific purpose, okay? Such as coding languages. These are invented. They didn't arise naturally. They're invented for the purpose of computing. So JavaScript would be an example of that. Formal logic is also an artificial language. We've invented formal structure, both the syntax and the semantics, in order to be able to evaluate expressions of reasoning. So here's your active learning exercise. And if you need to look any of these up on your phone or on the computer, go ahead and do that. But I want you to figure out if any of these are, which of these are formal and which of these are informal. So which of these arose naturally in societies, or which ones were created by individuals for a specific purpose. German, Python, Swahili, Mandarin, and Esperanto. So reasoning is expressed through language, and language itself, I want you to really think about what language is. Okay, so we're going to get philosophical here for a second. What language does is it arbitrarily assigns a meaning to a symbol, or normally, if it arises naturally, to a mouth sound. Okay, so we have the mouth sound first, okay, and then society agrees to a certain way of using this mouth sound, and then we attribute that mouth sound to both the thoughts that we have in our head, our internal content, and the expressions of those thoughts, the external content in language. So to express reasons, one must be able to articulate the content of these thoughts in a particular language. Okay, so just as in order to express the foundations here for reasoning and for logic, I'm doing this in language in English. We often express reasoning in natural language, but also formal, which you will be learning. So thought is universal and realizable in every language, okay? So I can have the same thought if I'm thinking in German, like der Himmel ist blau, as the same proposition in English, the sky is blue, as the same proposition if I said it in French or in Spanish or any of the other natural languages that I could access. Language's meaning links private thought, what's in here, to the external world, okay? So if I'm using a word like blue, there's a standard for how we use that word, and that standard I'm relying on to communicate information about the world. So the proposition is what expresses the content of thought, okay? And this is the basis for logic. This is why logic works throughout all languages. So if we are trying to first see if something is an inference or an argument or not, we're going to start by looking for the conclusion. Okay, so is there something that somebody is trying to persuade you or convince you of? Is there a disputed claim that is obviously questionable and requires evidence? Are some of the sentences working as evidence and some working as what is supported by that evidence? So that's what you're looking for. You're looking for the relation between these sets of the different sentences, okay? In order to do this, one of the really quick ways to do this is sometimes we use conclusion indicators. So these are words that indicate that we're drawing a conclusion from the passage. Most famous one is therefore, and that's a standard for logic. But there are many others. Hence, thus, ergo, so, it follows that, consequently, this entails that, which proves that, this implies that, necessarily, it must be that, this demonstrates that. We can conclude, as a result, and the capital letter C with a colon, a 3 dot in a triangle. That also means therefore in logic. And sometimes an extra line or 2 lines if we're writing logic across. Instead of writing it vertically, we're writing it horizontally. Finally, just sometimes the conclusion is in a passage at the beginning of the passage. So there's no conclusion indicator word, it's the placement of it. If none of that is helping, then you might want to look for words that indicate that evidence is being given. Since, because, for the reason that, follows from, as shown by, given that, seeing that, as indicated by, assuming that, and considering that. These are all what we call premise indicators. So this helps you divide up, right, reasoning from non-reasoning. If there's no indicators and there's no inferential relation, then it's probably not reasoning. So always look for inferential links as well. If some of the sentences seem to offer support for one of the other sentences, then it might just be an argument. So state whether each of these is a premise or a conclusion indicator. Since, consequently, hence, so, given that, therefore, for the reason that, and because. So I'm going to give you a couple of famous quotes, and I hope you to be able to find the argument. Again, look for the conclusion indicators first, premise indicators second, and then inferential link if you can't find either. If we cannot criticize other cultures, we cannot praise them either. But we clearly do praise other cultures, therefore we must be able to make moral judgments about them. Next, to those people in the Hudson villages of half the globe struggling to break the bonds of mass misery, we pledge our best efforts to help them help themselves for whatever periods required. Not because the communists may be doing it, not because we seek their votes, but because it is right. If free people cannot help the many who are poor, it cannot save the few who are rich. In the center of Warsaw, there's a sign that notes the distances to 2 capitals. In one direction, it points towards Moscow, and the other points towards Brussels, headquarters of Western Europe's tangible unity. The marker says that the distances from Warsaw to Moscow and Warsaw to Brussels are equal. The sign makes this point. Poland is not east or west. Poland is at the center of European civilization. It has contributed mightily to that civilization. It is doing so today by being magnificently unreconciled to oppression. Okay, and I didn't show this last time, but at the very end of my modules are the objectives. I think these work better at the end. So I want you to be able to check to see if you have learned what I have intended for you to learn this module. So do you understand the importance of Aristotle to logic? Can you define logic and identify its main goal? Can you define and identify an argument, premises, and conclusion, as well as the words and symbols for that? And can you identify subject and predicate?